Welcome to my channel people. Author link will be on description. Make sure to check it. After the situation calmed down between Bakurio's team and Orochimaru's, they finally started discussing the real reason for the visit. Orochimaru, I got some very interesting research regarding bloodlines. I'm pretty sure it could help you advance in whatever crazy goals you want to achieve, said Bakurio with a smile while putting one leg over the other, sitting in a relaxed manner. Oh, you really think you can offer me something I don't already know about? Said Orochimaru with an intrigued look, and Bakurio simply smiled mysteriously as he took out a copy of one of the pages of the incomplete bloodline research and handed it to him while saying, "See for yourself. You are quite confident," said Orochimaru as he took the paper with a smug look on his face, not expecting much, but the more he read, the more his expression crumbled and turned into a hideous twisted face as he greedily yelled, "Where's the rest? Where did you get this research?" Orochimaru's mind was racing with all kinds of ideas and theories, but what bothered him the most was the fact that someone else was actually doing experiments similar to his, yet he never heard of them. What the hell is this? Is this something done by the second Hokage? No, even he wouldn't stoop so low as to use humans for his experiments. Who's it then? Before he turned to look at the boy who held the answer to all these questions and was looking at him with a smug look on his face. "Oh, what do you think? Is my confidence still unfounded?" said Bakurio with the same relaxed smile, and Orochimaru finally calmed down and said with a serious look on his face, "How much more research do you have regarding bloodlines? Maybe this kid will help me master creating the perfect body," thought Orochimaru in delight. "The fish took the hook," thought Bakurio before he raised 3 fingers in response to Orochimaru's question, and the latter muttered with a disappointed look on his face, "Only 3, huh? I guess this is logical for such high-level res. What are you mumbling about? I have 30 pages. Said Bakurio, causing a sudden silence to fall on the room, surprising even his comrades, who begin to understand the importance of this research from Orochimaru's reactions. "Impossible." Orochimaru stood up suddenly, but there was no anger in his eyes when he yelled this. Instead, his eyes were full of ecstasy and hope that Bakurio wasn't lying to him. "Well, don't get too excited. What I want you to do is in no way easy," said Bakurio with a sigh that surprised Orochimaru, so he calmed down again and put on his business face as he asked, "What do you want?" Bakurio thought about it for a while before he responded, "I want to train under you for a while. I know you are in the midst of researching and developing certain techniques to achieve immortality using Konoha's forbidden techniques as a base, and I want you to teach me everything about them. Of course, you will also benefit greatly from this. As you can see, I have a lot of information you can't put your hands on." Orochimaru was surprised again by the in-depth knowledge this kid had of him and started to make him worried, but Bakurio soon continued, "It's fine to be worried, but believe me, I'm not the one you should be worried around," said Bakurio with a sigh as his face turned dark for an instant, startling everyone in the room. "Who could worry you so much when you have 2 dangerous monsters protecting you?" was the thought in Orochimaru's head, but he didn't voice it out since he could see that even the boy's comrades didn't know what he was talking about. "Oh, and stop with your stupid desire to take revenge on Konoha. You were stupid enough to let Danzo use you and influence you, but he's already dead now," said Bakurio while thinking about the information he gathered and how Orochimaru was approached by Danzo after his parents' death and started spewing all kinds of bullshit about his darkness and whatnot, the same way he tried to do to Itachi, and in this case, he actually succeeded, and Orochimaru grew to be more twisted after that incident and decided to spend his life searching for a way to defy death, and he actually succeeded. Although, Bakurio didn't know if by this point Orochimaru already developed his living corpse possession and perfected his curse marks, and if he learned how to control the impure world reincarnation. "I can't promise you anything regarding that matter," said Orochimaru, and Bakurio sensed a deep feeling of vengeance suddenly erupting from his heart that made his eyes flicker slightly, but no one noticed it. "We can discuss it later. And I have another request, but we will discuss it when you master the research I'm going to give you," said Bakurio, to which Orochimaru nodded in agreement, not minding leaving something for later as many things could change. "By the way, what's the current situation with the Akatsuki?" asked Bakurio, to which Orochimaru replied with a mocking look on his face as he said, "You really expect me to betray my new friends?" And Bakurio replied in a matter-of-fact saying, "Yup, it seems you know me quite well. Right now, They are trying to build their reputation, so most of the members are required to take mercenary missions to hunt for missing ninja or something similar. Of course, we are also tasked with recruiting people if we find them worthy, want to join," said Orochimaru with a smile, not minding at all leaking the Akatsuki's information to his new partner. "This guy really is a snake. I should make more preparations in the future before I let him modify my body," thought Bakurio, completely ignoring his invitation before he replied, "Did you ever meet the leader of the Akatsuki?" "No, the members rarely meet. All I know is that he's related to the village hidden in the rain, and he's very dangerous. Do you know him?" said Orochimaru with a serious look on his face. "Oh, he actually didn't lie. Is he trying to test my knowledge, or is he trying to buy my trust by warning me? Damn, I hate smart people," thought Bakurio before he shrugged and said, "Yay, I know a lot about him. Maybe I will go give him a visit sometime in the future. Want to tag along with me?" Orochimaru's eyes widened in surprise a little bit before he smiled and said, "Sure, why not?" To which Bakurio smiled faintly, and Mukai and Kurama, who were watching all of this, silently shot each other a knowing look as they both thought, "Poor Orochimaru. Your future is going to be very grim." The next few days, Bakurio settled down on Orochimaru's base and he got to know Kimimaro better. Although, the latter was hard to approach at first since he still considered him as an outsider, but he soon opened up to him when Bakurio bribed him with some candy. Kids are still kids in the end. This kid is probably going to die in a few more years, and if he wasn't inflicted with such serious illness, that parasite Orochimaru would have certainly possessed him for his great talent and bloodline, thought Bakurio while looking at the white-haired kid in front of him. "Let's go, Bakurio. Orochimaru-sama has called for you to start your training," said Kimimaro and started leading the way. "Finally," muttered Bakurio before he started following after him, excited about all the things he was going to learn, and needed to learn to achieve his purpose. Orochimaru's base was separated into many levels and sections. He had storage rooms for the research data he was collecting, experiment rooms where he conducts all kinds of disgusting experiments, training grounds for his followers and captives where some death matches occur from time to time so that he picks the best of his specimen, and so on. And right now, Bakurio was inside a huge library filled with all kinds of books about medicine, curses, seals, and forbidden techniques. He was sitting in front of a desk that was filled with tens of books as 10 of his shadow clones kept reading at the same time. His knowledge kept increasing like never before, and whenever he had any questions, he would consult with Orochimaru, who spared no effort to help him when he saw his surprising dedication and great talent, which made him tempted to possess him, but he every time changes his mind. The reason for this is simple. Every time he gets an evil idea against Bakurio, the latter would simply gesture to Mukai to have some sparring with Orochimaru to alleviate his boredom, and the results weren't to Orochimaru's liking. And sometimes when his evil intentions grow too strong, Bakurio would let Kurama have some fun instead, and after a month of this happening again and again, Orochimaru finally behaved himself and simply kept his end of the deal regarding teaching Bakurio without showing any other evil intentions. Which, to his surprise, was very easy, as he found out that this boy was a monster in all kinds of domains, whether it is learning medical ninjutsu, which requires a good affinity with yang chakra, or seals, which require a talent of their own. Bakurio seemed to be talented in all of them. Bakurio, of course, was detecting Orochimaru's intentions using the passive of his ability Jikaninki. As for his learning speed, it was thanks to his mastery of the Shadow Clone Jutsu, as well as having the Akamichi bloodline, which raised his affinity for yang release, and his advanced sealing talent, which greatly facilitated learning seals for him. This is without mentioning the help of the system, which increases the level of his skills by simply repeating them. Something that Bakurio was thankful for is the Bloodline Awakening Pill, which at first awakened his Sharingan when he came to this world, even though his Uchiha bloodline was very low. But its effect didn't end at that point, and it even enhanced the quality of his Sharingan. That's why he could use his Mangekyo abilities passively, which was something not anyone could do. After a month of learning under Orochimaru, Bakurio actually learned the latter's curse mark jutsu, which allows him to grant his chakra to other people and revive from it at a certain point when the user achieved complete mastery over it. But it wasn't easy, as the user needed to learn Orochimaru's second jutsu that allows him to separate his soul from his body to possess other people. Because Bakurio found out that Orochimaru actually injects people with fragments of his soul and not his chakra alone, which made him realize just how genius this snake was despite his twisted mind. And this wasn't all, because using what Tsunade taught him as the base, Bakurio was able to learn the quick regeneration jutsu, which allows a person to increase the speed of their cells division at the cost of shortening their life to boost their regenerative abilities. However, Bakurio wasn't satisfied and kept learning everything he could from Orochimaru, which is why he was in the library right now until he was visited by Orochimaru. Bakurio, that research was amazing. I actually achieved great success in my bloodline experiments and I'm probably going to make a breakthrough very soon, but I actually received some intel on a ninja that I'm quite interested in. Wanna go have a look with me? Said Orochimaru with his sick smile, to which a certain Bakurio closed the book he was reading and turned to look at Orochimaru before he asked, "Who could possibly draw your interest?" Bakurio was really curious, although he had a vague idea about who it could be. Someone that he didn't see so far with Orochimaru. His main helper Kabuto Yakushi. It's a ninja that used to work for Danzo as a spy and he's now left stranded in Iwa doing an infiltration mission, and according to my intel, he was already discovered and he's under pursuit. We should hurry if we want to arrive there in time, said Orochimaru while hissing with his tongue like a snake, causing Bakurio to shoot him a disgusted look before he said, "If you wanted to arrive there in time, you wouldn't wait to tell me until now. How smart. I really want to possess yo." Orochimaru halted his thought immediately as the image of a man with one Byakugan beating his ass and a terrifying fox appeared inside his head, causing his evil thoughts to vanish as he heard Bakurio say, "Let's move out." Before he flickered as the rest of his clones kept reading in silence, not affected by the conversation at all, and Orochimaru couldn't help but wonder, is his real body still here? Before he shook his head and gave the clones one last look before he started following after Bakurio, who already had a fox on his shoulder with a wicked smile on its face, ready to have some fun. This is going to be an interesting trip, thought Orochimaru before he suddenly saw Kurama growing slightly in size, just enough for Bakurio to ride on his back before he heard him say to him, "Don't lag too far behind." Wait, what? Orochimaru was dumbfounded as the last thing he saw was Bakurio clinging to Kurama's neck with all his strength, like his life depended on it, before they disappeared from his view and the sonic boom generated from Kurama's speed almost sent him flying. "How am I supposed to keep up with this?" muttered Orochimaru with a wry smile before he started following after them using his top speed. Not all of the root members that used to work for Danzo were discovered, because this sneaky man made it so that not even all the members know each other identities, and one of the most tragic cases in this situation were Kabuto and the woman that saved his life and adopted him when he was child, Nono. Nono was the one managing Konoha's orphanage. She was a kind-hearted woman. Unfortunately, this world used to have a man with the name Danzo, and being the evil son of a bitch he is, he spread his evil everywhere. Nono was a medical ninja, and she used her skills to gain money to help the kids of the orphanage. However, that money wasn't enough and they still required help from Konoha to live. And Danzo used this very same reason to blackmail her, as he asked her to give her one of the kids of her orphanage so that they join his root organization. And one kid ended up overhearing this conversation. It was Kabuto who accepted this huge burden in her place and decided to join the root so that the other kids could still live peacefully. However, what Kabuto didn't know was that Nono was also working for Danzo as a spy, and the two of them ended up being two of his best spies. And in crazy ninja terms, this meant that they knew too much and they had to be dealt with so that no information leaks ever happens. And Danzo was ready for this from the start, as he kept giving Nono fake information regarding Kabuto's growth, as he fed her with all kinds of fake pictures so that if she ever meets him again, she doesn't recognize him, and he actually succeeded in doing so, because one day, he sent the two of them to Iwa and they both succeeded in infiltrating this hidden village and became ninja under its roof. But his scheme didn't end here, because he leaked some information regarding Kabuto, which caused him to be exposed, and ordered Nono to pursue and kill him to solidify her position in Iwa. Unfortunately for her, Kabuto was too skilled and ended up striking her down, but when he uncovered her identity, he was devastated to find that she was his savior, and this almost broke Kabuto, as he couldn't even heal her wounds and kept yelling that he was Kabuto. Although, she never recognized him thanks to Danzo's scheme. So that day has come, huh? muttered Bakurio as his hair was flying through the air as he barely held onto Kurama. In the land of Earth that was protected by the hidden stone village. There was a teenager that has short ash-gray hair and onyx eyes and wearing Iwa's ninja uniform, which consists of a red outfit with long sleeves and a brown flak jacket over it, as well as some mesh armor around the ankles, and he also has distinctive black-rimmed glasses. The teenager appeared to be in a hurry as he kept running as fast as he could in the opposite direction of the village hidden in stone, and whether coincidentally or not, he was fleeing towards the land of fire. This was of course the secret root member, Kabuto Yakushi, whose spy identity was somehow leaked, causing him to land in this perilous situation, being chased by a woman with light brown hair and wearing an outfit that covered her face. So, Kabuto couldn't recognize his pursuer even though he collected a lot of information regarding Iwa's top ninja. At this rate, I will be caught at any moment. It seems I have no choice but to fight, and I need to do it fast and quick before her reinforcement comes. Just what kind of crazy situation is this? How was my identity discovered? Kabuto was both confused and panicked at the same time as he ran at full speed and started analyzing the rocky terrain surrounding him to lay a trap for the woman chasing him and take her out by one lethal attack. What Kabuto didn't know was that the order to take him down was set in stone for a while now, thanks to Danzo planning ahead, and his death didn't change anything as the root ninja were used to staying without contact until they complete their missions. After some more running, he finally decided on a plan as he landed heavily on top of a rocky hill, creating a small dust cloud and barely hid his body from the vision of his enemy, and he immediately used this moment to create a shadow clone to pretend that he was still running while hiding his real body under the ground using the famous mole jutsu. Then he waited, ready to strike down mercilessly. And just as he planned, his pursuer did not notice the trap and was about to pass right over it, and Kabuto's clone turned around and attacked her, trying to use the leftover cover of the dust that still didn't settle yet to distract her even more. Anticipating this kind of attack, his attacker quickly defended against it and was ready to return with an attack of her own. But just as she did so, Kabuto jumped out of the ground with his eyes shining with the desire to kill as he used the dangerous medical ninjutsu, Chakra Scalpel. This jutsu allows the medic to create incisions when they are trying to operate on someone's body, but not only can it create an incision on the outside, but it can also create incisions directly on the inside of a person's body, and Kabuto was intending to use it to completely destroy the insides of his opponent and leave her no chance to live. His choice in using this jutsu wasn't random but had a lot of thought put into it, because typically, Iwa's ninjas are famous for their earth release, and a lot of them can create a layer over their bodies made of earth to protect themselves, the same way Fudo does with his rock armor, and he even takes it another step and makes it invisible. And attacking their insides directly nullifies this effect. I got her, thought Kabuto with a delighted look on his face while looking at his hand that was getting closer and closer to his enemy that just realized what was going and started to turn around, but she knew it was too late as a hint of shock and fear was clearly visible in her eyes. Meanwhile, on top of a hill not far from where Kabuto was being chased by Nono, Orochimaru, Bakurio, and Kurama were watching silently while hiding their presence, and Bakurio, seeing the quick thinking of Kabuto in this highly stressful situation and how he laid out an effective trap for his enemy, left him very impressed, and his two companions were the same. This guy is one of the most influential characters of the Naruto world. His achievements are crazy to say the least. Mastering and improving the impure world reincarnation, mastering the snake sage mode, and even integrating other bloodlines inside of his body, having great medical ninjutsu that probably matched even that of Tsunade, his unbelievable spying skills that allowed him to infiltrate many organizations and hidden villages easily. This guy's talent is really beyond what most people of this world could imagine. Maybe having him with Orochimaru could prove to be helpful in the long run. Bakurio's eyes kept flickering before he turned to the snake beside him that was watching the events unfolding with an intrigued look on his eyes and said, "Aren't you going to take action?" Orochimaru smiled and responded to Bakurio, "Why would I? I want to see if his little plan works or not." "What a deranged man," said Bakurio, and then to the surprise of both Kurama and Orochimaru, he quickly flickered away in the direction of the two ninjas wearing Iwa's uniform and arrived just in time to block Kabuto's hand from connecting with Nano's stomach. Kabuto's eyes widened slightly while looking at the boy that stopped his attack by grabbing his wrist as he quickly jumped back, while Nono simply looked at the boy who saved her with an astonished look. "Who are you? I never heard of a boy as strong as you from Iwa." Kabuto quickly went on investigative mode out of habit, while Bakurio was simply thinking absent-mindedly. Nature's chakra is really amazing. It helped me greatly to quicken the growth of my body, especially the strength attribute. Then Bakurio raised his head and noticed that Nono also had a questioning look on her face, so he simply shrugged and his eyes turned into 3 Tomo Sharingan before he said, "Oh, sorry for the late introduction. I'm Bakurio Uchiha from Konoha. Nice to meet you too, Kabuto. Nono, how do you know my name?" Both Kabuto and Nono asked at the same time, but they were distracted when a small fox suddenly appeared out of nowhere and laid lazily on Bakurio's right shoulder, and to his left, a very pale man appeared, startling the two of them as they immediately recognized him. "Why, you are Lord Orochimaru." They suddenly started to feel the situation going far beyond their imagination as they saw Orochimaru give the boy that saved Nono a weird look as he ignored them before he said, "How come you seem to know more about this situation than I do?" Orochimaru was really annoyed by how Bakurio pretended to know nothing about their target while in reality, he seemed to know both the target and his pursuer. "This kid is really terrifying," thought Orochimaru with a cold look in his eyes as he saw Bakurio simply shrugging and said, "Well, some ninjas from Iwa are on their way. You two follow me for now, your mission here is over anyways." Kabuto and Nono found themselves more and more perplexed as the kid kept referring to them as a pair, and this confusion stemmed from them not knowing that they were both spies from Konoha, and Nono only knew that he was a spy when she was given the mission to kill him, and it took her a while to plan perfectly and reap all the rewards. Hearing Bakurio and seeing that he seemed to already plan for everything, Orochimaru decided to go along with it and said, "Follow us, and don't lag behind. Otherwise, he left the fate of defying him unsaid," but they both understood deep down when they saw the cold look in his eyes, so they complied without saying anything else. "It seems like looking like a snake has its own benefits," thought Bakurio before he quickly flickered to a safer place where he can deal with the two idiots in front of him properly. Inside a secure and concealed cave that Orochimaru quickly built using his great mastery of the earth release and showing just how good he is at being a cockroach. Bakurio was sitting on a large stone with Kurama sitting beside him and observing Kabuto and Nono, who were looking at him and Orochimaru warily. "What are you trying to do with us?" asked Nono, and Bakurio simply replied, "Didn't you get the news of Danzo's death?" Nono was surprised, but she nodded. "I did get news of it, but I was waiting for further orders if I should retreat or not, and decided to complete the mission I was assigned in the meantime." Kabuto was surprised that this woman whose face was covered actually worked for Konoha as well, and he couldn't help but say, "I'm also a spy working for Danzo." Nono looked at him in surprise and she turned to Orochimaru and Bakurio for confirmation, and seeing them nod shocked her. "I'm sorry. The last order I got from Danzo was to accept any missions that require getting rid of spies for Danzo. I didn't expect I would end up hunting another Konoha spy. Sorry." Kabuto stared at the woman he almost killed silently before he turned to Bakurio and Orochimaru and asked the same question as Nono. "Why didn't we receive any further orders after Danzo's death?" Hearing this, Bakurio and Orochimaru exchanged a look and they couldn't help but burst into laughter. "From where? You want Danzo to order you from the Pure Land?" said Orochimaru sarcastically, which surprised Kabuto and Nono, and the latter ended up saying, "What do you mean? Danzo always said that we were following Konoha's orders." "Well, that guy took himself very highly indeed," said Orochimaru with a smirk before Bakurio shook his head and said, "No. You were working for Danzo and Danzo alone. No one even know that you were working as spies in Iwa. We even raided the Roots headquarters and I don't remember seeing any relevant data concerning the two of you, so my guess is that Danzo destroyed everything. And you probably already can guess why." Nono and Kabuto were left speechless as the former said with a weak voice, "You mean he probably gave me this mission so that we take each other out?" Kabuto's eyes widened at this and he couldn't help but look at Orochimaru for confirmation, but the latter simply shrugged and pointed at the kid beside him, and when Kabuto looked at him, he saw the kid say with a regretful sigh, "Not only did he want to eliminate the two of you, but he tried to do it in the worst way possible. Nono, please remove your mask." Kabuto, hearing Bakurio call this woman Nono again, kept making him have a weird feeling, and he couldn't help but remember a certain woman that saved his life, so all his attention focused on this spy that was in the same situation as him, and when she removed her mask, Kabuto was stunned, and the hand that he almost killed her with started shaking uncontrollably because in his sight right now was a woman he knew very well. She was a young woman with shoulder-length light brown hair and emerald green eyes, and he watched in amazement as she took out a pair of square glasses from the bag strapped to her waist and wore them. A pair of glasses he bought with his own hands and money for this same person, so he couldn't help but start approaching her absent-mindedly while saying, "Nono-san." Seeing Kabuto approach her, Nono was suddenly on guard, but Bakurio's voice suddenly interrupted her as he said, "Don't worry, he has no ill intentions toward you, you two need to catch up," said Bakurio before he shot Orochimaru a look and they left together. This situation is turning quite interesting. Who would have thought Danzo would do such a thing? Muttered Orochimaru in astonishment after Bakurio told him about how Danzo gave Nono fake pictures of Kabuto's appearance as he grew up, since he didn't meet her for at least 5 years and he was 15 right now. Yes, and not only that, but we also have some visitors. Oh. Orochimaru was surprised since he didn't sense anyone near them, so he shot Bakurio a doubtful look, but when they left from the concealed entrance of the cave, Orochimaru finally sensed that a few ninjas were approaching them, and he could feel a very strong presence among them. This kid's senses are astonishing, and that presence that's getting closer, it seems familiar. Orochimaru thought, and the more that certain presence grew closer, the more he found it familiar until his eyes suddenly opened wide and said, "Bakurio, a troublesome fellow is coming here, we should leave quickly." Bakurio's face didn't change at all as he said, "I know, how could I forget his old rotten smell?" Orochimaru was surprised by this as he thought, did this kid meet him before? He suddenly found himself intrigued and decided to linger a little bit longer, and before long, a group of people arrived in front of the two of them. They consisted of a short old man that was flying through the air wearing the Tsuchikage's outfit, and two men and a girl. One of them was a large and imposing man, with dark eyes and black hair that spiked out at the back from underneath his bandana-styled forehead protector. He also has large cheeks and a plump nose, which gives him an overall look of constant joviality. He was wearing the red Iwa uniform, which has both its sleeves underneath his flak jacket and accentuates it with a yellow scarf which he wrapped around his neck. The other one was a very tall and brawny ninja. He has dark eyes and short dark gray-colored hair as well as a beard and a bulbous nose. He wears the standard Iwa ninja uniform with a left sleeve and a right lapel. The girl has short, black hair and distinctly pink eyes, which are accentuated by her eyelashes running upwards at the corners. She wears the standard attire of the Iwa nin, consisting of a red uniform with her right sleeve missing and a lapel over her right leg, the brown Iwa flak jacket, fishnet tights, and a skirt over them. She also wears regular shinobi sandals and a pair of gloves. Bakurio recognized them as the third Tsuchikage Onoki, his bodyguard Akatsuchi, the famous elite Jonin from Iwa Kitsuchi, and Anaki's granddaughter Kuritsuchi, who appeared to be a little bit younger than Kabuto. "This is quite the troublesome lineup minus the girl," whispered Orochimaru to Bakurio, who was still standing his ground calmly and looking at this group of people, and he noticed Anaki's face suddenly turn grumpy when he saw Orochimaru and said, "Who would have thought? I would meet one of the Sannin from Konoha while taking a trip to hunt an escaping fly." At this point, Kabuto and Nono left the cave and approached them, and everyone could see the slight tears marks on their faces, so Onoki corrected himself with an even bigger annoyed look as he said, "It appears that there's more than one fly in my village. I will make sure to extract every bit of information from you." Bakurio ignored the senile old man and said to Orochimaru, "It seems you and this tree bark has many things to catch up. We will take our leave while you enjoy your time." Orochimaru's eyes widened in surprise at the sudden betrayal, and he could even see a hint of a smile on Bakurio's face, clearly enjoying this and not caring at all about the danger they were in right now. Is he getting his confidence from that fox, or is this just a shadow clone? Even that fox might not be able to handle this old man's attacks. What's this kid planning? Orochimaru's mind was racing with all kinds of thoughts, but they were quickly interrupted when he saw the little girl suddenly turning angry and rushing at Bakurio while yelling, "What did you call my grandpa?" "Stop, Kuro-chan," yelled Akatsuchi as he ran after her along with Kitsuchi, one targeting Orochimaru and the other targeting Kabuto and Nono, as Onoki watched this with a sigh with no worry on his face as he said, "This girl is too hot-headed and careless, she needs more training." If only he knew that she was heading towards death itself and he was the careless one for letting her and ignoring the danger the kid in front of him could pose, not to mention the fox on his shoulder. "Ha!" yelled the hot-headed Kuretsuchi while she was rushing at Bakurio before she suddenly did a bird hand sign midway and yelled, "Earth release. Earth flow spears." This caused many huge spikes made of stone to suddenly emerge from the ground and attack everyone that wasn't wearing Iwa's uniform. Oh, how confident. Instead of using her lava release, she actually chose to use such a widespread attack. How disappointing for the future Tsuchikage, thought Bakurio while calmly dodging all the spikes and quickly appearing in front of Kuretsuchi and sending a very strong punch at her face. Impossible, how could he be so fast? Thought Kuretsuchi, but it was too late as the punch was already in front of her face. But before it landed, the old man that was floating in the sky suddenly rushed in front of her and blocked the attack for her with just one hand and looked at Bakurio in amazement. "Kid, how about you join my village?" said Onoki without any hesitation because thanks to his great experience and knowledge, he could tell that Bakurio was a very rare talent. From the experienced way he moved to easily dodge Kuretsuchi's attacks and arriving in front of her and leaving her no time to react, to the terrifying power behind his punch. If this kid grows up. Onoki's eyes kept shining the more he thought about it. Meanwhile, Bakurio retrieved his hand and he couldn't help but look at it in annoyance as he thought, "This freaking ability again tch, the reason Onoki who was floating in the air wasn't pushed back at all by Bakurio's punch is the same reason he could float in the air. This guy mastered a very rare form of earth release that allowed him to control gravity. And Onoki controls gravity to fly in the air, but he also uses it to attack and defend by either increasing or decreasing the weight of a certain object. And he used this on his palm to weaken Bakurio's punch. After all, it is hard to damage someone when you are as light as a leaf because power is a combination between weight and speed. And if you remove either from the equations, it would make it very difficult for people to injure you. Bakurio of course experienced this many times during the war, but no matter how much he tried, he simply couldn't copy it as it required the user to feel gravity before he could use it, just like how Minato is gifted in sensing space and that's why he could master the flying thunder god jutsu. "Grandpa, I'm fine, why are you interfering?" yelled Kuretsuchi with a pout on her face. Dissatisfied by Onoki saving her, clearly she wished to get her face broken and he shamelessly interrupted her wicked desires. Onoki let out a helpless sigh, but he kept looking at the boy in front of him who after looking at his hand for a while said, "Old man, are you senile or what?" Onoki suddenly had veins emerging on his forehead as he said, "Kid, I'm going to teach you a lesson for being so rude," and then he extended his hand and Bakurio knew what was coming so he quickly jumped backward. Just as he did so, the ground that he was standing on caved in as if a huge weight was pushing against it and even the air seemed to be moving on its own like an illusion. "Oh, you actually dodged my earth release. Added weight rock technique, not bad," said Onoki, and then Kuretsuchi rushed at Bakurio again, now taking him seriously as she yelled, "Lava release. Lava fist," and from her hand, a huge amount of lava started gushing out covering her arm and she punched Bakurio with it Akainu style. However, this time, Bakurio wasn't going too easy on her as he let her approach him while doing some hand signs before he easily sidestepped her attack and used the wind style vacuum sphere jutsu on her, sending multiple fast wind bullets at her at such a close distance leaving her no time to react, but Onoki again saved her just in time by creating a rubber wall using his own lava release. The vacuum spheres went deep inside the rubber wall stretching it and they actually landed on Kuretsuchi making her feel like she was punched multiple times before they started ricocheting to where Bakurio was standing, but he dodged them easily before jumping away and dodging a dangerous earth spike that tried to catch him off guard. Bakurio shot Onoki a look and he noticed that the latter was really angry now that Kuretsuchi got hurt and he was about to get serious, so he decided to check out the situation and he saw that Kabuto and Nono were struggling against that guy Kitsuchi while Orochimaru was winning against Akatsuchi, but the latter was simply buying time instead of trying to defeat Orochimaru. "If you don't join my village, you should just die, kid," said Onoki with some coldness in his eyes as he started to feel the threat this boy could pose to his village, so without wasting any time, he was about to get serious, but he was surprised when he saw that Bakurio was smiling weirdly at him. "What's this kid planning?" thought Onoki, but then he suddenly looked at his granddaughter that was laying on the floor and saw someone appear from her shadow and held a very sharp kunai near her neck while his other hand quickly put some chakra disrupting seals on her so that she doesn't try to do anything stupid. It was of course the same boy standing in front of him who he just wanted to kill. "You! Let her go!" yelled Onoki, and he was about to rush at Bakurio, and hearing his yell, Akatsuchi and Kitsuchi were distracted, so they turned around to look at what was happening, and they were horrified to see that Kuretsuchi was taken captive. "Kuro-chan!" yelled Akatsuchi, but this distraction cost the two of them dearly as Orochimaru used this opportunity to extend a snake from his mouth, and from its mouth extended a long sword that almost stabbed Akatsuchi through his chest if he didn't dodge fast enough. As for Kitsuchi, he was hit by poisonous needles that Nono used, causing him to feel weak, and quickly took out some antidote. "Get any closer and her life will be gone," said Bakurio to the angry-looking Onoki, whose anger was only rising as he saw his followers that retreated to his side injured. But he was the Tsuchikage, so he quickly calmed down and looked at Bakurio, who was approached by Orochimaru and the spies, and said, "What do you want? You want to start a war between Konoha and Iwa? Ha 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 ha, go ahead, start 2 wars if you want. If only you cared about starting a war when you tried to kill me," said Bakurio, understanding clearly how this old man was trying to pressure him by the severity of the situation, but he didn't care, and this reply brought a wicked smile on Orochimaru's face. This kid is getting more and more pleasant to the eye, and he shot Bakurio a weird look which made the latter shiver. Seeing that his tactic didn't work, Onoki planned to do whatever it takes to take Kuretsuchi away from these people before he annihilates them, so he said, "What do you want?" Bakurio smiled warmly at him and said, "That's good to hear." But for some reason, that smile made him feel that something wasn't right, and it was confirmed when Bakurio said, "Let's start with your dust release." "Ha ha ha ha, how greedy. I like it," said Orochimaru with an ecstatic look as he kept thanking his luck for staying to watch this show. "Kid, how can I give you my dust release? Do you want me to serve you?" said Onoki, pretending not to understand what Bakurio meant, but the latter was very insistent as he said, "Who would want a servant that would die from a mild cold? Stop pretending, old man. I know that your dust release isn't a Kekkei Genkei but some kind of secret technique passed to you by your teacher Mew." Onoki had a very ugly expression on his as he replied to Bakurio, "How do you know about this?" "No, who are you, kid? This was after all a top secret information and very few people know about it," and seeing the surprise on Orochimaru's face, who was simply expecting to get a DNA sample from Onoki, made it clear just how secret it was. But Bakurio wasn't from this world, so these secrets were meaningless to him, and right now, he was looking at Onoki with a calm smile as he said, "Where I got this information from doesn't matter, the main point is, do you agree or not?" Bakurio inched the kunai even closer to Kuratsuchi's neck and pricked her slightly, causing a drop of blood to slide down her neck as she winced in pain, but although she was horrified, she still gathered up all her courage, showing her true potential at this moment, and said, "Lord Tsuchikage, you can't make such a deal with these people, otherwise, our village would lose one of its greatest weapons. I'd rather die than let this happen." The people from Konoha were surprised by this girl's courage and loyalty to her village, while the people from Iwa kept gritting their teeth as Akatsuchi yelled, "Don't hurt Kuro-chan," as he tried to find a way to sneak attack this kid, but the injury he suffered from Orochimaru's attack suddenly acted up, causing him to cough some blood. "Akatsuchi!" yelled Kitsuchi as he lent him his shoulder to lay on, and he said, "Don't, I'm fine. We need to save Kuro-chan." Kitsuchi nodded at him, but his face was full of doubt as he replied, "I know, but how?" Then he turned his attention to Onoki and noticed that he was gritting his teeth and contemplating what to do in his difficult situation. He was very angry at the moment, especially when Kuretsuchi called him Tsuchikage instead of grandpa to remind him of his position. "Not bad, little girl. You love your village a lot, huh?" asked Bakurio suddenly, breaking the tense atmosphere as he also stopped pricking her with his kunai, which she was lucky that it wasn't a lethal kunai. "Yes, I do, and I won't let you use me to harm it," said Kuretsuchi defiantly, showing no fear. "Oh, what do you think, Orochimaru? Isn't she amazing?" asked Bakurio as Kabuto and Nono kept watching this silently, not knowing what to do since they were grateful for getting reunited, so they didn't want to mess with their benefactor's plans. Which were in reality only Bakurio, since Orochimaru was planning to watch them kill each other before he takes Kabuto. She is indeed. I'm starting to get tempted to add her to my collection, said Orochimaru with a creepy look in his eyes that sent a cold shiver down the spine of everyone that was watching. You bastard, what are you planning to do to me? Said Kuretsuchi in distress, but Bakurio simply shrugged at the hopeless case of Orochimaru before he suddenly asked her, what do you think of the other hidden villages? No one knew what Bakurio's intentions were behind his question, including Kuretsuchi, who replied, What kind of question is that? As long as they don't harm my village, I don't care about them. HMPH. Bakurio's eyes suddenly lit up as he said, oh, that's good to know, before he suddenly removed the kunai from her neck, surprising the people from Iowa that were gritting their teeth at their inability to change this situation. But even his companions were surprised by this. Bakurio-kun, what are you doing? Asked Orochimaru nervously as he was already preparing to make a run for it at any moment, and even Kuretsuchi turned around to look at Bakurio and asked with a puzzled look on her face, are you really letting me go? After all, this was his chance to take the dust release of her village, which was probably the strongest attacking ninjutsu. What are you waiting for? You want me to hold you hostage again? Said Bakurio, pretending to put an evil look that only appeared as cute on his small face, so Kuretsuchi really didn't know what to do, so Onoki suddenly appeared beside her and dragged her back to her group. Grandpa! She yelled, but Onoki was only looking at the kid in front of him silently, and they heard him say, so, what are you going to do now, old man? Onoki was contemplating if he should kill this kid who was showing them such goodwill or not, and as these two ideas kept clashing inside his head, one idea finally dominated. Sorry kid, but I simply can't let you grow up. Onoki suddenly extended his hands in front of his chest and said, dust release. A white orb of light enveloped inside a transparent cube suddenly appeared between his hands, and he was planning to pulverize Bakurio and the rest, who started to get nervous, and they were about to flicker away in multiple directions other than Bakurio, who showed no nervousness in his face. Because just at this moment, someone stepped in front of Bakurio's group, protecting them behind her small frame as she yelled. Grandpa, stop. Kuro-chan, what are you doing? Asked Akatsuchi, and Onoki too was perplexed as he yelled without deactivating his ability, Kuretsuchi, what are you being naive for? We need to eliminate this danger before it hunts our village in the future. No Grandpa, I don't think he will be a danger to our village, and if he does I will make sure to stop him at that time, said Kuretsuchi with her face filled with determination, and Onoki couldn't help but grit his teeth in annoyance before he stopped his ability, as he couldn't sacrifice his most talented descendant. Consider yourself lucky, kid, you better not cross my path again, said Onoki haughtily, but Bakurio simply chuckled at this, as he was simply going to blink behind Onoki and use Kakashi's 1,000 years of death on him with a lethal kunai no less if he didn't stop. I would love to see if you would stay arrogant at that point, thought Bakurio before he turned to Kuretsuchi and said, you didn't disappoint me, little girl, hopefully, we will meet again in the future, and we will see at that point if you could really beat me or not. HMPH, I will beat you for sure, said Kuretsuchi with a snort, and Bakurio simply smiled and threw his kunai to her, which she easily caught with a surprised look as she said, what are you doing? Bakurio had a serious look on his face this time before he said, keep this as a reminder so that you don't confuse courage with carelessness in the future. Then he turned his attention to Onoki and said, as for you, old man, it's about time for your heart to stop being bound by your past. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Then Kurama suddenly grew bigger to the surprise of everyone, and Bakurio quickly jumped on its back as they both disappeared, and Konoha's group quickly followed after them back to Orochimaru's base, leaving Onoki thinking. Does he really know about my encounter with Madara? TCH, this kid is really annoying. But then he saw the strong determination to grow stronger in his granddaughter's eyes and thought that at least she's going to benefit from this encounter. But then he was woken up by a sudden sound of something falling to the ground. Thump. Quadruple A, Kitsuchi, are you okay? Yelled Akatsuchi, and Kitsuchi barely replied while twitching like a bug. It's the poison of that woman. TCH, take him to the hospital quickly, said Onoki as he turned around to leave while deep in thought. Back at Orochimaru's hideout, Kabuto and Nono kept thanking Bakurio and Orochimaru repeatedly for saving them from Danzo's elaborate scheme. Orochimaru shamelessly shared the praise with Bakurio until the latter said, No, you should return to Konoha and take care of the orphanage as you should have been. I already arranged with the Hokage to fix the problem with the funding so you don't have to worry about it anymore and risk going through these kinds of mission again. Hearing this, Nano's eyes suddenly lit up and she couldn't help but say in excitement, "Really, is this true?" Bakurio nodded at her calmly and he saw her turning to Kabuto with her face filled with happiness and held his hand, causing the latter to blush as she said, "Kabuto-kun, the orphanage is finally saved." But then she realized that Bakurio only said that she should go back, so she immediately stood in front of Kabuto like a mother protecting her child and said, "What about Kabuto-kun? What are you planning to do with him?" Bakurio smiled at her reassuringly and said, "Don't worry, unlike Danzo, I have no plans to separate the two of you, but I want him to stay here for a while and learn from Orochimaru. After all, Kabuto is very talented, and if he stays in Konoha, honestly, I think his talent would go to waste." Nono seemed hesitant to agree as she kept looking at Orochimaru, whom she was still worried about, and she ended up asking, "Are you really sure Konoha won't consider him as a traitor if he stays with Lord Orochimaru?" Bakurio shot the human snake beside him an annoyed look for making his life harder before he said, "Don't worry, I can vouch for his identity, and don't worry about Orochimaru, he's turning into a new leaf, right Orochimaru?" Orochimaru shot Bakurio a weird look before he smiled creepily and said, "Of course, I wouldn't do anything carelessly with you around." Nono seemed to relax a little bit when she heard this, but Bakurio's eyes suddenly flickered with a dangerous light that only Orochimaru noticed. "So, my guess is correct, huh? Interesting," thought Orochimaru silently. "Nono-san, this is a great opportunity for me to learn under such a legendary ninja and grow stronger. Please don't worry, and I will make sure to visit you in the orphanage as much as possible," said Kabuto, all of a sudden prompting Nono to look at him sadly before she said, "Fine, but I will stay here for a few days." "That's okay. This place is large enough," said Bakurio as if he owned the place, which annoyed Kimimaro, who was observing from the side, and then he followed by saying, "Kimimaro, show them where they can stay, I have something to talk about with Orochimaru." "Little bastard, don't order him." Kimimaro was about to protest, but Orochimaru looked at him and said, "Do as he said, Kimimaro." Hearing this, Kimimaro snorted at Bakurio before he gestured at Kabuto and Nono and said, "Follow me." In another hidden room, Orochimaru was facing Bakurio silently before the latter spoke, "How did you know I had plans to leave?" Orochimaru finally showed his genius as he shrugged and said, "Your action seems rushed, like someone rushing against time. I wonder what could be the reason for this. To the point that you gave up on something such as dust release. Don't try to make it like you really didn't want it. I could see that if not for that girl acting the way she did, she would have already become a corpse by now if Onoki didn't accept, am I correct?" Bakurio was really surprised by how intelligent this man was. "It seems I'm underestimating the characters of this world too much," thought Bakurio. Orochimaru's guess was right. Bakurio was ready to go into an all-out fight with Iwa for the jutsu and only changed his mind when he saw that Kuretsuchi seemed to be too important for the future of this world, and creating such a strong hatred between Konoha and Iwa would be bad in the long term, plus he felt that Onoki might even sacrifice her. But the other reason why he decided to give up on the jutsu is because he had an idea on how it was created. You see, bloodlines allow certain clans to merge two chakra natures to create new effects. For example, the lava release which Kuretsuchi used. That was a combination of earth and fire. There's also ice release, which is a combination of wind and water, or scorch release, which is a combination between fire and wind, and so on. But this doesn't mean that people without bloodlines can't achieve similar effects. The only difference is that the requirement for them to achieve this is way harder than people with a bloodline, as they are required to merge the two different chakra natures manually. Bakurio, after intensive research and questioning of the third Hokage, learned that merging two chakra natures requires the following steps. First, the ninja has to fully master the two chakra natures, meaning that he could transform his chakra into them seamlessly and effortlessly without much loss. The other thing required is a very strong chakra manipulation mastery so that they can lessen the pressure of dividing their attention into doing multiple tasks. An example of this is how Hiruzen uses the properties of water to create a flowing river of earth, or how he combines wind with earth to create a dragon head that shoots air-enhanced earth bullets. He of course didn't achieve a 100% combination as he reached some kind of bottleneck in his training, But this alone made him one of the strongest cages that ever graced this world and gained him the title of Professor. As for what dust releases, Bakurio theorized that someone with a very pure bloodline can already merge two chakra natures effortlessly if they use Hiruzen's method to add another chakra nature to the mix. This kind of destructive jutsu that's a combination of three chakra natures would come to exist. And in Anaki's case, it was a combination of him naturally having a lava release, fire plus earth, and his predecessors found a way to add wind to the mix, resulting in the highly destructive dust release. Bakurio's planned to raise his mastery in the different releases to their highest level, and he believed that he should be able to master these kinds of abilities at that point, especially with his multitask ability. That's why he was able to let go of his desire to take it by force. Orochimaru, I met Jiraiya before I came here to meet you, and there are many things that bothered me from that meeting, said Bakurio with a sigh, which intrigued Orochimaru since this was the first time he saw this kid put on such an expression. Oh, you met that old pervert, what did he tell you? Said Orochimaru, and Bakurio decided to tell him and see his reaction, and to his surprise, this guy's face kept twitching the moment he told him about the darkness in the prophecy as well as how the great Toad Sage lost his future-seeing abilities when he tried to look into his future. Bakurio, do you have any idea about what this darkness is? Said Orochimaru suddenly, to which Bakurio's eyes flashed dangerously. Answering Orochimaru's question, listen, that power is far beyond us, I suggest to you to never approach it, otherwise it will consume you. Said Orochimaru with a fearful look as if he actually experienced it, which really surprised Bakurio. What's going on? Bakurio was really perplexed. Bakurio, do you know where I got my regeneration jutsu? Asked Orochimaru all of a sudden, and Bakurio couldn't help but say, I always thought you probably created it by yourself or got it from Tsunade, is this not the case? Orochimaru shook his head before he said, you couldn't be any more mistaken. Bakurio was surprised, so he asked, where did you get it from then? Did you steal it from some ninja you killed? Orochimaru seemed to be recollecting some memories before he said, no, I got it from a trade I made with a traveling doctor some time ago. I exchanged it for some intel about Konoha since I was already planning to leave it. Orochimaru paused here, trying to see if Bakurio was showing any signs of anger, but the latter kept simply listening coldly, waiting for him to get to the main point. Of course, I wouldn't trade with someone if I could simply get it by force, so I tried to kill that guy, and surprisingly, he used a type of chakra that I never saw before. It was a dark chakra. Bakurio's eyes suddenly turned eerily cold, and Orochimaru, who was dreaming to become immortal, suddenly started smelling death, which made his heart shake in fear. What's this feeling? It reminds me of when I tried to establish a contract with the dead using Edo Tensei. Just what's this kid hiding, was all Orochimaru could think. Meanwhile, Bakurio's mind was racing as he started to connect the dots together. Don't tell me, that annoying spy we've been searching for, we actually couldn't find him because of this bastard giving him all kinds of intel about Konoha. But at least now I have some clues about his identity. After calming down, Orochimaru smiled nervously and said, what was that? He really wanted to know what was that terrible aura he just felt emanating from Bakurio. Continue the explanation, said Bakurio, ignoring his question since he wasn't going to expose his secrets just to anyone, especially not to this snake. Orochimaru, seeing that it wasn't the time to ask about this, continued by saying, fine. After I attacked that guy, I was surprised to see that his previously normal-looking body transformed into a perfect specimen. In an instant I couldn't contend against him anymore in both speed and strength and had to resort to my arsenal of jutsu to force him into retreating. But I didn't want to chase after him since I didn't know what kind of trump cards he still had. Hearing Orochimaru describing this guy using dark chakra to transform into a superhuman, Bakurio couldn't help but recall the people Hiruzen talked about that Hashirama and Tobirama fought, and the latter had to use his impure reincarnation jutsu just so he could barely hold them back. Don't tell me, someone is actually trying to revive the monster that Hashirama and Tobirama fought. Bakurio's heart was shaken at the thought of this grave danger. And he quickly asked Orochimaru, what's the identity of this guy, and why did you say that I should avoid this darkness, otherwise it might consume me? Orochimaru, you didn't try to experiment on this type of chakra, did you? Orochimaru simply shrugged before, true to Bakurio's worries, he said, I did. I sealed some of it in my body when that guy attacked me using some kind of dark orb that resembled the fourth Hokage's Rasengan, and after failing to find a way to control it or use it the way he did to enhance my body, I had to stop. Especially since I noticed that it had a very bad influence on the mind, like some kind of hypnotic genjutsu that forces people to follow their dark desires until they became a slave to them. Bakurio was surprised as he felt that this was the same way he felt when that dark orb in his heart tried to influence him subconsciously to fall into despair during the war, but he knew the guy in front of him was a huge liar and didn't tell him the complete truth, so he asked him with a doubtful look on his face, "Did you really find no way to use it? You the great genius Orochimaru. This kid is hard to mislead," thought Orochimaru, who tried to hide his lies by telling a lot of truth, but to his surprise, Bakurio still saw through it easily, so he let out a smirk and said, "Well, I won't lie to you, I found a way to integrate it inside a forbidden jutsu I'm mastering." The impure world reincarnation. Bakurio grew thoughtful before he asked, "What do you mean?" Orochimaru smiled eerily and said, "You don't need to know how the jutsu works for now since it's too complicated for you. All you need to know is that the main way this jutsu uses to create a contract with the dead is by using their feelings of regret and longing for something in their lives." Bakurio nodded as he understood a little about this jutsu from his knowledge of Naruto, but Orochimaru's next words really startled him. "The way I found to integrate this dark chakra into it is by modifying the bodies of those I want to reincarnate with it, and if they are revived while having some vengeance in their hearts, I believe they could use this dark chakra to its fullest potential and would make them very strong. Especially since the summoner can have complete control over his summons, so he wouldn't risk losing control of them from the effect of the dark chakra." Bakurio was left speechless by this guy's twisted ideas, but he couldn't help but admire his talent. "You really are an evil genius." Hearing Bakurio's praise, Orochimaru let out a chuckle before he said with a smirk, "Now, do you want to know the identity of that guy?" Bakurio's eyes started to shine brightly and he knew Orochimaru was trying to make a deal here since he saw how much Bakurio wanted to know the identity of this person. "What do you want?" asked Bakurio calmly, and he could see Orochimaru's eyes flickering around the room before they landed on him, and said with a greedy look in his eyes, "You said you want to add Hashirama's bloodline to your body. I want you to give me your DNA if that experiment succeeds. I also want your help in the future in case something goes wrong and Konoha hunts me down." Bakurio considered his words for a while before he said, "I can agree to the first one, but for the second one, you need to promise to stop dreaming about attacking Konoha, otherwise I won't be able to help you. Deal?" Bakurio extended his hand and Orochimaru looked at it silently before he shook it with a weird look in his eyes that creeped Bakurio out, so he quickly retrieved it and said, "Now, tell me, who's this traveling doctor you met?" Orochimaru recollected his memories silently before he said, "That doctor's name is Shino. From the information I gathered, he's a famous doctor that resides in a village to the east of the Land of Fire called Cloud Village. He has a very good reputation for being a kind-hearted individual that would help people whether they had the money to pay him or not. You can't imagine my surprise when he approached me for intel." Shino, huh? Cloud Village. A murderous aura suddenly started gushing out of Bakurio's body, startling Orochimaru, and at this moment, the clueless Shino didn't know that death will soon come knocking on his door, and through his throat. If Bakurio watched the Naruto movie about the Land of the Sky, he could have understood right away that this wandering Dr. Shino's the one responsible for the resurrection of the Zero Tails. He was originally from the village hidden in the sky. This village was very unique and feared by the various hidden villages because it was a literal flying fortress. They had very advanced technology that allowed them to create tools for their ninja to fly through the air, and they could bombard their enemies from the sky while they themselves get very few casualties. As for the flying fortress, it was actually a special type of technology that works with dark chakra, and they probably had a way to create it even without Zero Tails, or maybe they still had some reserves of it from the time the monster that fought with Hashirama existed. This village held some kind of grudge against Konoha, and during the Second Ninja War, they decided to attack Konoha, which resulted in their destruction. That's why the saying, "A starving camel is still bigger than a horse," is true. And Konoha at the time had many talented individuals such Hiruzen and Kakashi's father Sakumo, as well as Fugaku's father. After that incident, some remaining forces of the village hidden in the sky decided to remain hidden and bide their time to make their reveal when they recover the monster they worshipped, the Zero Tail. For this, they sent a man named Shino. He was a very skilled doctor, so he was easily able to gain the trust of the people he meets by appearing as a kind man that likes to help people. What he was truly doing, however, is first creating a simple base in Cloud Village, since they were near the remains of where the fortress of the village hidden in the sky was hidden, as well as try to find a way to infiltrate Konoha to get the scroll that was sealing the Zero Tails. That's how he came to know Orochimaru, since the latter heard of his fame as a great doctor and decided to add him to his collection, but he failed and ended up simply making a trade with him since Shino was simply too careful. But he got what he wanted from Orochimaru and found a way to slowly infiltrate Konoha. His first move was to get acquainted with people there, so he made multiple visits using his identity as a doctor to easily enter and leave. This was so that he could confirm the information that Orochimaru gave him, and at the same time, he didn't want to take action right away as he was still preparing a vessel for the Zero Tails because it's going to be in a very weak state when it's revived, deprived of most of its dark chakra. So, he and the remaining Sky Ninja were planning to torture the people of the Cloud Village and feed their negative emotions to Zero Tails so that it creates dark chakra for them. In the end, of course, their plan failed as they miscalculated the power of the newly resurrected beast and ended up getting wiped up completely by Konoha, although the fate of the Zero Tails was never shown. After Bakurio organized his thoughts, he called for Mukai, who was training the Hyuga's jutsus, and he appeared to be bored as he approached him before he directly said, "I want you to go back to Konoha." Mukai's eyes lit up slightly since this was a good time to go meet his family, but he still asked just in case what this little monster in front of him wanted. What for? Bakurio quickly recounted everything he gathered so far to Mukai, and in the end, Mukai was left both horrified and speechless as he let out a sigh and said, "And here I was expecting I will be going on a small break." Bakurio glared at Mukai as he said, "As if I'm taking breaks. Anyways, only tell Fugaku and Minato about this, and tell them to do their best to catch this man alive. I have some plans for him." Mukai could see an eerie light flashing through Bakurio's eyes, and he couldn't help but gulp down and think, "I better not mess this up." Before he said, "Don't worry, I shall complete this mission perfectly. Now then, goodbye," before he immediately ran away, leaving Bakurio speechless for a while. "It seems I need to leave, going to Raichi Cave for some time later," muttered Bakurio silently, and he started making some special preparations for a moment he was fearing. "What's your next move?" thought Bakurio. Only he knew who this thought was directed at. Inside Konoha, the place was getting more and more livelier. Naruto and Sasuke, who were both 6 years old, entered the civilian academy to learn how to read and write, and they ended up making many friends. Naruto got along with Shikamaru Nara and Kiba Inuzuka and many others, while Sasuke was working his legs running from the girls chasing after him. This was because he showed great potential by awakening his clan's Sharingan, as well as being a very strong fighter even without it. Not to mention his good looks, as well as being the son of the current Hokage, so many people ended up fawning for him. But thankfully, he had Naruto with him that always kept his ego from going out of control and didn't let him develop a bad character. Not to mention the shadow of Bakurio always appears in his head whenever he sees the admiring gazes the people keep sending him while saying, "Wow, he's probably the most promising ninja in the village right now," said person number 1. "I agree. He's so strong for his age," said person number 2, but Sasuke would quickly refute these claims, saying that Bakurio was way stronger than him, and even Naruto, who he never agrees with, would back him up on this, yet the people simply didn't want to believe such a thing. After all, the higher-ups made sure to keep this information hidden as much as possible, and the kids that never met Bakurio simply decided to regard these rumors as false until they see him with their own eyes. "Hey Naruto, you always talk about your brother Bakurio. When are you going to introduce us to him?" asked Sakura with a mocking look in her eyes, and Naruto couldn't help but snort at her. "HMPH. Just wait until he returns from his training. You guys will see by that point how cool brother Bakurio is." "Hey, no one's cooler than my Sasuke," said Sakura with unfocused eyes. Clearly she was daydreaming, which made the people around her laugh and the girls get jealous as they started fighting in the playground. But that's when a man that they didn't recognize entered, suddenly making the kids grow silent. But when Naruto and Sasuke saw this man, Their eyes suddenly started shining as they both ran at him and said at the same time, "Mukai-san. You are back." Mukai smiled warmly at them and he couldn't help but think, "It has been a while, huh?" He noticed how Naruto and Sasuke kept looking around in excitement and he understood what they were searching for, so he said with a regretful sigh, "Sorry kids, Bakurio didn't come back with me." Naruto and Sasuke's faces suddenly grew disappointed and Mukai could hear the kids whispering around him, "So this man is the one that could beat the cruel Anbu Captain Kakashi and the Uchiha monster duo at the same time. He doesn't look that strong," said Kiba while observing Mukai from top to bottom, which brought a dark look to the latter's face until he noticed a certain kid was looking at him with a weird look in his eyes. Eyes that were as white as snow. This kid's eyes. Mukai's eyes narrowed slightly while looking at none other than Neji Hyuga. Although Mukai was intrigued by the Hyuga kid that was clearly branded with the seal of a branch family, he only noted down in his sense knew that this wasn't the time for such things, so he turned to Naruto and Sasuke and said with a smile, "Naruto, Sasuke, even though Bakurio didn't come back with me, he sent the two of you some gifts." Hearing this, the disappointed faces of Naruto and Sasuke turned slightly better as Naruto said reluctantly, "What did he send us? Is it ramen? Is this all you think of?" Though Sasuke while shooting Naruto a glare. Mukai smiled before he took out a scroll and summoned from it two short swords, and Naruto and Sasuke immediately recognized them as Bakurio's main fighting weapons. "I'm sure you two know how much he likes these two swords," he said, "to treat them carefully or he will come to beat you both up." The two of them didn't even hear the rest of his words as they immediately stole the short swords from his hands and kept staring at them in wonder. "Bakurio seems to really like these two kids," thought Mukai while staring at the kids in front of him with a warm smile, and he could see determination igniting in their eyes. Clearly they found a new kind of motivation. "Aren't these the main weapons your friend Bakurio uses to fight? How is he going to fight without them?" asked Tenten suddenly, who was attracted by those two short swords as she could tell clearly that they were of very high quality since her clan is famous for making all kinds of weapons. And this question brought some doubts to Naruto and Sasuke as they started hesitating about accepting the two short swords, but Mukai's next words made them feel at ease. "Don't worry, since he sent you these two swords, he probably found a new replacement, so don't worry and train hard to learn how to use them, okay?" Naruto and Sasuke nodded at him and Mukai said, "I'm going to see the Hokage now, see you guys later." Mukai was about to turn around and leave, but he suddenly looked at the two of them deeply and said, "Thank you for taking care of Murata." Naruto and Sasuke grew bashful as they responded, "Murata's a nice kid." And Sasuke said, "HMPH." Hearing their response brought a smile to Mukai's face, who visited his family before coming here and was happy to hear that his son made some friends and was getting better both mentally and physically, so he shot one last look at Neji, startling him before he disappeared without a trace and went to meet Fugaku to discuss with him how to catch Shino. "So these are Bakurio's swords, huh? They don't seem as much," said Ino with some scorn in her eyes, but Sasuke and Naruto ignored her as they kept looking at the two swords in wonder before Sasuke approached a tree in the playing ground, and to the astonishment of those watching, he waved the sword at it with a slow movement, yet it was still enough to split the tree that was as thick as man's waist in half, and it went through it like butter, making Ino gulp down in fear as the kids around them shot her an "Air you stupid" look. In the Hokage's office, Mukai quickly reported to Fugaku everything that Bakurio discovered as well as how he discovered it, which put a worried look on Fugaku's face as he said, "Are you guys sure we can trust this information?" Mukai calmly shrugged and said, "You know how careful that little bastard is," and Fugaku nodded in agreement with him before he said, "I will inform Minato and the three of us will go hunt him down immediately." Mukai nodded before he said, "There's also another weird matter with the great sage frog of Mount Myoboku. I will tell you what happened when we meet Minato." Fugaku's eyes had a worried look before he replied, "Let's go." For some reason, this Hokage started to have a bad feeling for some reason. Inside the Uchiha compound, Minato was currently meditating as he was working to master Sage Mode under the advice of Bakurio. And after these past few months of hard work and Bakurio giving him some ideas, he was very close to mastering it completely. And at this moment, he suddenly felt two familiar chakra signatures arriving at his house, and they directly entered secretly and came to his room. Clearly they didn't want their visit to be known. So, Minato calmly opened his eyes and a knocking sound followed right after from the door of his room as he said, "Come in." Of course, his visitors were Fugaku and Mukai who immediately entered and Minato stood up and said with a calm smile, "Mukai, you are back. How's Bakurio-kun?" Mukai's face had an amused smile as he said, "He's doing good, he actually wanted me to tell you that he already mastered the Sage Mode." Minato's eyes widened in surprise before they ignited in flames of rivalry and said, "As expected, Bakurio-kun is really a once-in-a-lifetime talent." Meanwhile, Fugaku was left speechless by this sudden news as he thought, just how strong is that kid right now? Mukai nodded in agreement with Minato before he said with a frown, "Unfortunately, I'm not here to only bring good news and we have some terrible news as well." Minato started to have a bad feeling as he said, "What happened?" Before he took a seat and gestured for them to sit as well, and as they did, Mukai started talking with a frown. "It all started when we met Jiraiya the Sannin." Mukai started recounting everything that happened in Mount Myoboku, leaving Minato and Fugaku with dark looks as the former finally said, "Just who's this darkness? Does Bakurio have any ideas?" Hearing Minato asks this important question, Fugaku shot Mukai a piercing look as his Sharingan activated and he wanted to see through any of his lies. But Mukai was unfazed as he said with a frown, "I feel like he has some guesses, but he's keeping it hidden deep inside his heart for some reason. And I feel like he's going to do something crazy," seeing Mukai's worried face while discussing this topic. Minato and Fugaku understood that he was very worried about Bakurio, especially seeing how he gave his swords to Naruto and Sasuke. He didn't want to tell them the truth that he didn't know if Bakurio really found replacements for them or not, so he lied to them to not make them worried. And what he was truly feeling from how he understood how Bakurio thought is that the latter probably felt like his swords weren't going to be of any help to him, that's why he left them, as mementos. "Mukai, just what's Bakurio planning?" said Fugaku as he suddenly stood with his eyes flickering dangerously, but Mukai simply shook his head and said, "I don't know, he's planning something that requires Orochimaru's help, that's all I know. As for the matter of this darkness, I honestly don't know any of his plans regarding it, and he wouldn't tell me no matter how much I insist on asking, but I know that's he's very interested in this doctor that seems to be connected to it." Minato grew thoughtful as countless machinations started working inside his head trying to understand why Bakurio was hiding so much from them, but then his eyes narrowed into the surprise of Fugaku and Mukai. They started to shine coldly, so coldly that they felt a chill in their hearts even though Minato wasn't staring at them. "Minato, you," muttered Fugaku, who knew that this was a look that appears on Minato when he's absolutely angered, and he was ready to fight to the death. Meanwhile, this was Mukai's first time seeing this and it left him speechless to see the always gentle-looking Hokage this cold. Minato looked at the two of them before he said, "Let's go catch that Shino guy, maybe we will find our answers there. I really hope I'm wrong in this one," thought Minato as he stood up and was ready to start the hunt. Thank you for listening guys, see you in the next part.